our boy, Professor Statman. No, I did not make that up. That's his real name, Professor
But
Statman.
no, the way you pronounce it though, like I don't know if that's where the
Well,
emphasis
come on.
goes.
That's how I'm on the investing podcast. That's how I'm pronouncing
I am Statman.
it.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
We got 2 weeks till your favorite holiday coming up. You excited?
Not my favorite holiday, man.
You love the candies. You love dressing up. You love it all. But you're talking about not your favorite holiday. Come on now.
No,
You love it. You love it.
you,
Secretly
you
love it.
just you just did this to throw shade. Like literally, you're just trying to get me all riled up.
I calls it like I sees
Uh,
it. I calls it like I sees it.
you could call it using the English language correctly. You could do that.
I calls is it like I sees is it. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Right. All right. Listener mail, skippydoogles at gmail.com. We always waiting. And remember, we got those premium subscriptions. skippydoogles.supercast.com. Episodes early, extra episodes, get to get inside our mentals a little bit more on things we're thinking about, investments we're thinking about, research recommendations for y'all. Today, we fitting to kick off. I'm reaching into that fishbowl. We fitting to kick off with a little bit from Ben Carlson. I know you throw shade at me when I bring Ben up. I don't know why you throw the shade at me when I throw Ben out there, but I thought this was a little message worth discussing.
Yeah, I don't have anything personal against Ben. It's just his pieces aren't always that deep thinking. But hey, he's writing more blog posts than I am, so props. It's no big deal.
What do you think we're here for? He's not here for the deep thinking. He's here to throw out the graphs and the just like
Yeah, all right.
a little bit for us to think about, and then we do the deep second level, third level, eighth level thinking. That's what we do up in here. So we're going to take this piece. It's called Sequence of Returns, and I want to get your opinion on it because I had a couple thoughts. It spurred a little bit more thoughts than the piece itself spurred for me, and so I want to get your view on it. Here's the setup. So what Ben and his friends at the compound oftentimes do is they'll take in listener mail, just like the Skippy and the Doogles, and they'll answer it for folks. And here's a piece of listener mail that he got. I'm not going to do it verbatim, but I'm going to give you the high level of it. Someone writes in and says, a friend of mine and I were disagreeing over a concept. My friend says he can't quite fathom the idea of investing when the market is down too far. Like he doesn't have the psychology for it. And so, in his opinion, he'd rather invest, market just goes up a steady amount. I'm like, market go down, I'm good for it. And because I can get my dollars in at a lower rate, who's right? That's the basic premise of this question. So Ben says, all right, I'll do the math for you. I mean, you got Excel probably, but still, I'll do the math for you, says Ben. And so he does it. And what he does is the following. Really simple little test. I'll tell you the outcome and then give you my thoughts on it. So if you take a 10-year period, years 1 through 10, in one column, he's got the first 5 years going down 15% per year, and the next 5 years going up 40% per year. That's first column. Second column is the market going up every year by 9.1%. The reason it's 9.1% is if you take column 1 and column 2, it's the same annual return on each one, except they're just different sequence of returns, hence the title here. The first one goes down a whole bunch, then goes up a whole bunch. Second one is steady, 9%. Mm-hmm. If you're investing a steady amount per year, let's just call it $10,000 for a random number. If you're investing that amount per year, in that first scenario, where it goes down, 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 up, 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 you're going to end up with about $323,000 at the end of it. The second column, you're going to end up with $167,000, roughly. So almost double in that first scenario versus the second. Takeaway is, if you're putting in a steady amount over a 10-year period, the sequence of return matters a lot, and you're going to be much better off when the market's down and you're throwing all your dollars in and then it catapults. Anything else you'd add to the context?
No, but a quick pause. Let's ask the listeners to just think about this. Isn't this obvious? This was the least surprising thing I read this week. Everyone, Marx, Buffett, et cetera, says I'd rather have a lumpy 15% than a smooth 12%. Filling your numbers.
No, but this is different. This is different than what you just
hold
said.
on. Morgan Housel says volatility is the price of emission. This is craziness. The stock market is made to fool the human mind, to make it really hard to invest your $10,000 in the fifth year in this drawdown scenario when the market's gone down 15% for 5 straight years. It is agonizing to invest those funds. If you invest those funds, my goodness, do you buy some bargains? And the wealth that's created is eye opening on the backside. I don't know. Tell me why I'm supposed to be surprised or fired up about this. This is like, I learned this in kindergarten, Doogles. All right, right here. Kindergarten.
Kindergarten,
Yeah.
kindergarten. So all the things you just stated are true, however, unrelated to this.
Okay.
Not completely unrelated, but let me give the nuances. Okay, here. Because you said I'd rather have lumpy 15 versus steady 12. This
Mhm.
is lumpy 9 versus steady 9. It's the same number except lumpy. And that's where the sequence of returns comes into play. Because if you switch it up, so let's just say here, let's say we keep the average 9% return, but instead, this is the first 5 years of 40%.
Mhm.
The second 5 years is negative 15%.
Mhm.
At the end of that period, you're going to end up with like 60 something thousand dollars. The sequence of return matters when you have a finite period of time like this.
Mhm.
That's the point. That's the point. The PSAs, let me actually
Well,
come back
it,
at it.
no, so that is the point that's really relevant. And that is the torture of investing in the US stock market because you go, I need money X. I need money 20 years from now. I need money 3 years from now. I need money 40 years from now. And you don't get to control the sequence of returns. So a lot of this is just bad luck. And we've talked about this on the show 1,000 ways over the last 4 years. That is why you can generate obscene amounts of wealth by doing nothing, by sitting on your couch watching football. If you kind of get lucky, if you're disciplined. But the only thing you have to take the things you can't control out of the equation and do what you can control. And what you can control is an entirely different conversation, which I don't know that you want to go into now. But yeah, there's some luck involved here.
This is what I think is important. There are a few things I think are important here. I know this does not surprise you. However, one thing that you just stated around not being able to control the order of returns here is critical. And when you're looking at, there's only a 10-year period. If you tell me, Douglas, you only have 10 years
Mm-hmm.
of returns you can have, that changes my entire psyche of how I think about investing. Like in this period of time, imagine that this is somebody who's 70 years old. I don't know, I'm making up a time period, or we can even go a
Yeah.
little bit younger, 60 years old, something like that. And you're like, okay, until retirement, you have 10 years. How are you going to throw
Mm-hmm.
that down? This shows how much luck ends up being involved in that short period of time. But even if you take the sequence I mentioned, up 40% first 5 years, down 15% next 5 years, if you're talking about a 30-year period, okay, that happens. And everything you stated before with the lumpiness. But if you're talking about a 10-year period, that sucks. And one of the PSAs I'll give, you may disagree with this point, but I'm gonna throw it out. A PSA I'll give here is when you're evaluating a particular strategy,
Mm-hmm.
that's different than when you're looking at absolute dollar returns in a scenario like this. What
Talk about that more, please.
Because what I'm thinking of here is when I'm looking at returns, like if you just look at the time value, I would say if you put $1 in at the beginning of this period, what is that dollar worth at the end? And that's not the sole way that I would look at a strategy, but I would look at a strategy that way. So it's just looking at like the percentage and the overall CAGR
Mm-hmm.
versus saying that the sequence matters necessarily no matter what it is, even if you split that sequence up, because then you start to take more luck out of the equation. Again, that's not the only way that I would look at a strategy, but I think that that's when you look at a CAGR, like that's the reason for looking at something like a CAGR or a compound annual growth rate. So the average rate of return, let's just call it simply. And
Yeah.
for all those scenarios, it's 9%. I go, okay, so you have a 9% return. And that's just what I'd say for folks, because in this situation, I could easily see where someone would take these two scenarios. Let's say the two friends are comparing. They're like, let's do it. Let's just see. And the two friends are comparing. They have two different periods, and one friend goes, I made 166K. You made 322K. obviously your strategy is better because you made double the amount. No, actually, both were 9%. It just so happens that during this period, luck reigned supreme for one person versus the other. Was that helpful?
Uh, yeah, I was actually validating. I was building a quick model over here to validate your
Oh, you're such a finance guy.
conclusion. Yeah, I hear you. I think what's so eye-opening here with his example, and again, maybe not eye-opening to me because I felt like this was fairly straightforward, but typically that lumpiness is advantageous if you can override the fallacies of the human brain, like the hunter gatherer tendencies of, oh my goodness, I can't put money into something that has gone down that much that quickly. I don't know though. If your overriding conclusion is just luck matters effectively, I'm not going to fight that at all.
It goes beyond that. I'm more thinking about when I read his pieces sometimes because, as you mentioned, they're simple. He takes like simple concepts and lays them out for folks. I try and think about what are the takeaways that someone that might be a more novice investor can take away from this
Yeah.
piece. And one of the ones I think about here is it's good to put your money in early. And I go, ooh, okay, if someone takes that away from this scenario, if you reverse the numbers and go 40, 40, 40, 40, 40, 15, negative 15s for the rest of it, it doesn't stay true. And the point isn't that. It's more so, and he does say this, but it's more so that what you were saying, sequence of return matters, luck is a part of it, and you have to have the fortitude to continue putting in when the market's down. That's what it is. No matter when those negative 15s come, the point is to be able to put the money in there because you get a discount. That's what I want folks to be able to see here. And so the sequence of when those negative 15s come should not necessarily make you look at whatever your strategy is, even if your strategy is just dollar cost averaging. I'm not talking about anything more advanced than that. Even if that's your strategy, it's just like when the negative 15s come, if they come at the end, they come at the beginning, they come in the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't let that necessarily override your strategy. That's all I was saying. So it's for those folks that that could have different takeaways from this. I just wanted to throw that out there. That's it.
Cool.
We can move on.
So, in my fishbowl, when I reach in and I pull out something about investing risk,
Ooh.
the most surprising piece of this article is that it was written by a professor at the University of Santa Clara to me.
Okay.
Did you have that one on your bingo card?
I when I was reading it, so they stated they're a professor. So we knew that. But that's not where I would have guessed. Not Santa Clara University is a fine university. It's not about that.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the dominant place where I read things by professors and investment risk.
Listen, it was in my top 10, put it that way. I considered some Santa Clara back in the day. But
Did you?
look at that. Look at that, mate. I don't know. That's for me to know and you to find out. Okay. Man, I thought this was like so close to being brilliant, and then I'm not sure that it fully brings it home. So we're gonna bring it home, I think.
I think you're sure it doesn't fully bring it home.
This professor talks about, I gotta find the exact piece, how almost every time you sit down with a financial advisor, work with a fintech, robo advisor, whatever, the first thing they will ask you to do is fill out an investment risk tolerance survey, questionnaire, whatever you call it, right? And he says we all understand why, but the risk piece that's a tiny piece of the risk that truly matters in your life.
Maybe not tiny piece, but it's only one piece.
It's only one piece.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your risk tolerance in your career, in your social life, in your investing life, in your investing outside of Wall Street life, like maybe the appetite for the size of home, the amount of debt you take out for the size of home, like this whole piece. What this really reminded me of, I'm going to grab it off my shelf, is the Harvard Business Review's Guide to Buying a Small Business. The one thing that this book,
oh my gosh,
I'm going to connect it, Doogles. The one thing that this book does an amazing job of is walking through how if you found or purchase a small business, the whole world thinks that is incredibly risky. If you compare it side by side to like working for a Fortune 500 company, in a lot of ways, it ends up being equally risky or less risky because you are so much more in control of your destiny, right? If you own the thing, if you run the thing, sure, you can get hit by macroeconomic headwinds. Sure, the business model can blow up today. But if you're at the Fortune 500 company and so consultant comes in and says, we don't need this division anymore, you are just along for the ride. And literally, there's almost nothing you can do.
I get that. It's kind of like if you, let's just say 50 to 60% of your portfolio is in one stock that has a 132 PE ratio. Some people see that as risky.
How's
Yeah.
Broadcom today,
Whew.
Douglas?
Oh my goodness. It's my whole life. To back up for a little bit, because everything you just said makes perfect sense to me. The three types of risk they named here were investment risk, career risk, and social risk, which you stated.
Mm-hmm.
To give examples for each of those so folks know, I think investment risk is probably the most obvious. How concentrated is your portfolio, as an example? How much is in equities versus bonds? How, et cetera. Career risk is when you think about taking a leap to go into a brand new industry, a brand new field, brand new profession. Social risk could be how much do you try and expand your friend group, talk to people that are outside of people that don't share your same mindsets, for example, could be like social risk as an example though.
Someone that's more willing to take social risk might end up with a larger network.
Good.
That larger network might mitigate against career risk. The part I really liked of the article where I think he's attempting to go is just like, if you look at all these things holistically, it can change what your investment portfolio should look like. I'll let you dive in, but I'm ready to take it almost another direction already.
Go for it.
Okay, so
actually, hold on. I know I gave you permission, but let me pause. I'm curious before we go. Of those three, where would you rate yourself? Just low, medium, high across investment risk, career risk, social risk?
I don't know. What I will say is I've been surprised at how different some of those things are over the last 20 years. Like basically, I see those evolving in ways that I never expected. The career risk, I'm more willing to take career risk than I thought I'd be. Investment risk, I am still very conservative, as I think listeners would know, but becoming more tolerant to things that maybe seem risky on paper, but the more you understand the true investment process and fundamentals, I don't know. So I'm growing on all fronts is how I'd say it.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Now proceed.
Well, let's go ahead and you can answer those questions, too.
I would say, generally speaking, I'm high on investment and high on career and like medium to low in social. But maybe similar with the investment risk is I'd state myself, I'm high on paper because I am like rather concentrated in stocks. But then I also, like my other accounts, I've got bonds, I've like a good amount of cash set aside. So it's not high in the sense of risk of hitting the death line high.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, probably higher than most in investment, higher than most in career, and medium to low in social, I would say.
Okay. So our boy at Santa Clara University, Professor Statman. No, I did not make that up. That's his real name, Professor Statman.
No, the way you pronounce it though, like I don't know if that's where the emphasis
come
goes.
on, that's how I'm on the investing podcast. That's how I'm pronouncing it.
I am Statman.
Yes, it's like robot voice too. where I think he should have gone with his article is talk about a friend of ours who we respect. I'm being loose and calling it a friend, but Wes Gray, great guy. He runs Alpha Architects. Wes has written books. Wes is very public about like the investing philosophy that he was born with, and effectively, I'm gonna simplify and paraphrase, but effectively, he's a deep value investor, kind of similar to me.
Yep.
Wes was on our friend's show, Excess Returns, with Justin Carbonneau and Jack Forehand, and he did the show us your portfolio thing, right? Where they go in deep detail about his portfolio. And again, I will paraphrase. I won't go line by line because it's been years since I saw this. But how does Wes invest his wealth? He invests it as a hedge against the stock market going down. Now, that doesn't make any sense, right? At first glance, that doesn't make any sense until you realize that he owns an investment firm where if the stock market goes up, his business is worth way more money. So he's looking holistically at his entire risk situation and saying, oh, my natural tendency to invest is one way, but actually because I have all this career risk tied up in a thing that is hedged the other way, what my so-called retirement portfolio should look like should be almost entirely opposite of what my natural inclination should be.
Yep.
I think that is a brilliant example of someone looking holistically at all these types of risk rather than just the investment risk in a box and just the career risk in a box and just the social risk in a box, and making a very logical and wise decision. So that's where he should have gone.
I agree. I agree with that point. And it's kind of like if you take Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, and if Jamie said, Doogles, can you just, which this is what Jamie would do, by the way, Doogles, can you just take a peek sees at my portfolio and let me know what you think? And if I looked in and saw Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citigroup, I'd be like, maybe you should think about diversifying outside of just the financial, like everything is in the big banks. It's very, very similar. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the social risk one is one that was interesting. And this Professor Statman wrote a book, and I'm curious how far he takes it in the book, because I think that's the one, especially when you go to where you went to around networks. I think that's the one that can be quite interesting. If someone, for example, lives in rural Arkansas, then I might be like, maybe taking some immense amount of social risk can be quite helpful to you because your natural habitat doesn't have a lot of people in it.
Oh, I thought this was a Walmart play. I thought you were going to be like, you never know when the Walmart error is hunting in your neighborhood, and that lands you a
Walmart errors are now in Denver. So
I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah, they're probably everywhere. They're everywhere. Like there are thousands of them. They're everywhere. Yeah. Interesting concepts in the piece. I think the piece itself is like, okay, which makes me wonder if you can't put together like a 300-word piece, how the book is, but I'm still curious about the book.
Well, if your name is Professor Statman, you're really handcuffed. It's not his fault. I think the concepts here, I'm so with you. The concepts here are so right. And maybe there's brilliance in the book, but the high level overarching point of like, let's not isolate investing risk in a box and only talk about that is brilliant and barely ever mentioned.
That's right.
So
That's
props.
Right. This has been sitting in my head for a minute, and so I'm just going to say it. You know, I always got jingles in my head, and the jingle in my head right now is Mr. Statman, bring me some risk, but not just investing because it makes me say tisk. So
love it.
You're welcome, everybody.
There's your intro to the show.
Yeah,
and you only get this type of garbage on the Skippy and Doogles Talking Investing show. There we go.
All right. I'm reaching in.
Reach in.
I'm going to talk about consumer spending, but not just the downsides of it here, because usually I'm like Eeyore up in here with the consumer spending. Not today. There's a Bloomberg piece called U.S. Consumer Spending is Increasingly Driven by Richer Households. This is also not necessarily good, but I'm here just to give some info, not to talk about the doom and gloom. There's a graph up in here, and what it does is it compares from 2018 to today, the growth of retail spending, and breaks it down into 3 different income brackets. There's the low income bracket, which it says is 0 to 60K a year, middle income 60K to 100K, and high income over 100K. It indexes to 2018. So if you imagine 2018, it says is 0. That's 0% growth because that's the starting point. And then goes, it looks like it might be like quarterly, roughly, until today. This is what the phenomena that it throws out is. All 3 groups are growing by roughly the same amount annually, roughly. Okay. Then you hit 2020. We all remember what happened in 2020. They all drop. Middle income drops the most. High income drops the second most. And then low income drops the least. Then they all take off. However, after this point, low income takes off the most. So if when they go to, I'll call it Q1, Q2 roughly of 2021, at that point relative to 2018, the low income 0 to 60K folks were up like 22, 23% growth in comparison to 2018. Mm-hmm. Went up so much more than both the high income and middle income were roughly 14, 15%, somewhere in there. Now fast forward to today, and you're looking somewhere between the 16 to 18% growth for the high income and closer to 6 to 7% growth for low income. So this is the point of the title of the article. Consumer spending today, when we're saying consumer spending stays relatively robust, driven by higher income folks. It's the middle and the high in this case. It also comes back to when we were discussing Dollar General, Dollar Tree not too long ago around their earnings are getting hit quite hard. Low income folks are cutting back a lot more
Mhm.
or growing less, according to this, than high income folks. That's the first point I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
You don't think that's interesting?
It's hard because they pick it's a percent change figure, right? And so they
Yeah.
pick a start point of 2018. I really wonder what this graph looks like if the start point is 2010 or 2000. Like sometimes this gets incredibly skewed when you look at short periods of time, or the you can kind of hack the data. So I need more info.
That's true, but we're really saying it's just a couple years pre-COVID breakout, a couple years after is the comparison here. I get your general point, but if you just look at it at even the high level, take the qualitative, you say explosion of growth during COVID, predominantly from low income.
Sure. If you
And
write everyone what were the checks? $600
something
on
like
top
that.
of six. I don't it might have been 1,000. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But if you write everyone a fixed dollar amount, then that's more meaningful to the lower income crowd.
Yeah.
And so the spike, again, in percentage terms goes up. So that doesn't really mean a ton to me.
All right. Now you're making me go to the dark side.
Okay, go.
I wasn't going to try and go here. If you go to the next order of thinking here and and take the reasons why there's households or houses, right, increasing in value. You've got the fact that people's wealthier folks who have more money in savings accounts with higher interest rates now have more disposable income. What then happens when rates start to come down? What then happens when the higher income households have to cut back themselves? The point I would bring out here is that unlike what you see, and I know it's a short period of time and it could be cherry picked, but unlike what you see in the 2018 to 2020 when everyone's growing roughly at the same rate,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like with the stock market, when you see a divergence happen like this, it means that you have more, I can't quite call it single points of failure, but you have less robustness in the quality of the spend. That's the point that I think this starts to then get to.
Yes, yes. You had to
And
go doom and gloom, and that's fine. But yes, because I mean, even if it's just rising prices, of course, this matters more when you're more price sensitive. I agree.
mm, here's the other point that it's not a surprising fact, but I do think it's interesting that they brought up here is so longer term homeowners who locked in rates. I don't know if you call this a long term homeowner, but they do, who locked in rates in 2020, 2021, right? When we were at the low liggity low lows, those folks are sustaining their higher spending. People that bought property 2022 or after, they are not sharing in that overall spending increase. I mean, it makes logical sense. Still, I think it's an interesting fact.
I think I'm fired up today because you made me wake up so early. But of course, like the difference in those average monthly payments in like our neighborhoods can be 1,000, $1,500 a month. Same
It's a
house,
lot.
same.
It's a
It's
lot.
just like your neighbor who bought 3 years later. If that's a $1,500 a month pay cut,
Yeah.
effectively. Yes, I totally believe it. That's not changing anytime soon, unless things get low enough that people can actually refinance. And I'm not convinced that's going to happen.
I hope it doesn't happen.
Oh gosh, well
Sorry.
I didn't
Ooh,
like the.
I
Yeah,
said
you
that in
didn't
the
mean.
wrong
I
way.
no, you didn't mean it like that. I know. I'm. I don't even like the previous rate cut. I think we should be in the fives for a while. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but that's a different thing.
It's a different story.
I'm gonna pull one more thing out of the fishbowl quickly. This will be on the Substack, and you guys can dive in if you're interested. When the U.S. government sued Visa about potential monopolistic practices for the
Hmm.
debit card network, I sent you the deposition
Yeah.
and said read the first 13 pages because it was fascinating. They laid out all the pieces. The Wall Street Journal did awesome reporting here, and they interviewed a bunch of executives from Visa and their competitors, and they wrote this pretty lengthy piece about all these different things, this tactics that Visa used to come to an agreement with Costco in 2014, how they worked with the threat from PayPal and Square and everything else. Douglas, I don't know if you've had a chance to make it through this piece, but I ended up walking away being like, Visa's management team is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Because it's just the SWOT analysis, right? They're always going strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And basically, anytime they saw a threat, sure, they wrote Costco a check for 150 million bucks and threw some hoops to make sure that they didn't agree to a competitor. They did the same with PayPal. They did the same with Square. They've taken this model of like, rather than let a new competitor's payment network bloom, we will just try and find a way to share a little of our wealth because
Yep.
we're doing just fine over here. Our profit margins are 50%. And I kind of go, I mean, they're not destroying the competition. They're not limiting the competition. They're just saying, wouldn't it be more fun to cash $100 million check than it would be to like build a network to compete with us? So is that I kind of love it.
I love two things. One, what you just stated around this is such good management of this organization. And the second is that their statement and defense to the DOJ is like erroneous. Like that was their whole defense. So I did enjoy those two things. They're doing more of like let's take an NBA analogy. It's probably a bad one, but they're not doing the Jordan, like I'm going to do it in your face and push your face down into the hardwood. They're doing more
Yeah.
like the Jokic of like, oh, I won another MVP. Oh, just little old me. I don't even like the game.
Oopsie daisy.
Yeah,
Another triple double.
exactly, exactly.
And it's like, yeah, the problem with Visa is their profit margins are too good, but
They're so good.
Mastercard is effectively very similar.
Yeah, they're
So
like,
it's
how can we make less money so we can make more money? Is like how they're trying to play that game. How do we
I
make
really think,
the
yeah,
least amount of most money we
the
can make?
next 3 years is going to be like, oh shucks, our profit margins are only 40%. We'll get the DOJ off our back, and then we're going to split. Here's the last point on this: they truly do have this incredible network,
Yeah, it's great.
and the network effects associated with it, and they do 60% of debit card volumes and 50% of credit card volumes, and it's something special. I'm watching this though. I found this
Yeah, that's
fascinating.
good. That's good. All right, that's a wrap. Appreciate y'all. See y'all next week. Remember skippydoogles@gmail.com for that listener mail, skippydoogles.supercast.com for that premiums, and skippydoogles.substack.com to get the weekly highlights that we have here on the show. Appreciate you.
Like Doogles singing. That's the weekly highlight.
Appreciate you.